message right there on the left-hand side of your screen saying, quote, "Where's the aid?" Footage from just 4 days ago shows Hamas terrorists looting an aid truck. This is the same organization spreading false claims about a deliberate starvation campaign in Gaza. Make it make sense. Again, we do have a closer look at the video that they posted, and you can see it right there coming in courtesy the IDF. They have circled those Hamas terrorists they say are stealing the aid, and you can see this in the video, again, posted there from just 4 days ago. I do want to discuss all of this here, so let's bring in Eylon Levy, former Israeli government spokesperson, joining us now live. Thank you so much, Eylon, as always, for taking the time to be here with us.
Hi, Josh.
And I did want to start by asking you, we played some of the comments there from President Trump speaking in regards to what Prime Minister Netanyahu had to say about no starvation there in Gaza. What do you make of all of those comments? What do they say to you?
Look, there are clearly hungry people in Gaza, but the reason there are hungry people is that Hamas continues to wage a vicious war to hijack aid, and the UN aid system has completely collapsed inside Gaza. I was there inside the Gaza Strip just 2 days ago at the Kerem Shalom crossing. We saw the contents of 600 trucks worth of aid. We're talking hummus and lentils and flour and cooking oil and pasta all rotting in the sun because the UN hasn't been able to pick it up. Just yesterday, Israel let in more trucks than the UN was able to collect. That aid delivery system is not working. As a result, there are people who are hungry, there are people who can't get food. And what we need now is pressure on Hamas to stop hijacking aid, stop diverting it to its fighters, and on the UN to start doing its job and stop making excuses.
And what I want to do is pop up that video once again that we were showing right before we brought you on. And this is one example, according to the IDF, and you and I have spoken about this in the past, but you can see the Hamas terrorists there looting that aid. That is obviously a problem there. Is there anything that anyone can do to prevent the terrorists from stealing that aid and preventing it from getting to civilians?
One of the problems of getting aid to people who need it is law and order. Who provides security? Israel is offering the UN, will safeguard those convoys, will keep them safe, and the UN doesn't want that. You want to hear something crazy? The UN is demanding Hamas police protection. The same Hamas that led the October 7th massacre, the same Hamas that keeps diverting aid and hijacking it, as we see in this video. It's crazy that the UN is demanding that terrorists protect the trucks inside Gaza. That's one of the reasons that it's been difficult to get aid to people who need it. And that's why Israel has been taking the initiative to try to get aid directly to the people who need it and make sure that Hamas can't steal it. It's why Israel is helping the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, an American initiative, distribute aid directly to civilians. And it's the biggest aid operation on the ground now. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has delivered nearly 100 million meals worth of food, bypassing the Hamas system. And I think the UN needs to work together with it to get food to hungry civilians instead of continuing to make excuses and demanding Hamas protection for its trucks.
And we're just a few months away from 2 years since the October 7th attack there by Hamas on Israel. We know that there are still dozens of hostages that are being held. Is there any information that's known about the remaining hostages, their conditions, all of that at this point?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the hostages, because this has been swallowed by other news and people are trying to forget them. There are still 50 hostages trapped in the dungeons of Gaza. 20 of them are alive. We know they're being tortured. We know they're being starved. We know they're being held in the most inhumane conditions, and Hamas is refusing to release them. Here's how crazy it gets. Israel and Hamas were discussing a deal, a ransom, basically, to get the hostages back, and international pressure has now sabotaged those talks. We've seen foreign ministers from around the world, not the US, thankfully, who decided to turn the pressure up on Israel. That led Hamas to harden its demands in the negotiations, increase its price, and those talks collapsed. Steve Witkoff, the U.S. Special Envoy, said Hamas was not negotiating in good faith. It's not interested in reaching a deal. And so the release of the hostages seems further away than ever. Netanyahu is now talking about exploring other ways to get the hostages out, but I'll be honest, no one in Israel knows what that is. What we need now is pressure on the Hamas regime and its patrons. Hamas, which started this war, Hamas, which is fighting this war from a network of military tunnels underneath civilians' feet. Hamas that is stealing people's food and hoarding that food. Hamas that is holding the hostages and refusing to surrender. It must be pressured. Lay down your arms, go into exile, release the hostages, and this horrible war that you unleashed on the Middle East can finally end.
I want to pop up this statement coming in a short time ago from Prime Minister Netanyahu's office here. It was posted on X, and there were kind of rumblings about this yesterday, but he did say Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The conversation between the two leaders was on the issue of Iran. Again, not a lot of information known, but are there any, let's say, notable insights, implications from that conversation?
Well, the challenge now is to make sure that the Iranian regime cannot rebuild its nuclear weapons program. Let's look at what an amazing success the Israeli and American operations were in Iran. And by the way, great teamwork and a great reminder of the importance of the American-Israeli alliance. They took out Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan, the main nuclear sites. Israel killed most, if not all, of the senior nuclear scientists, struck key parts of the nuclear program, and set Iran back by years. Iran is no longer a nuclear threshold state. And the challenge now, how do you keep the Iranian program down? How do you stop them rebuilding it? How do you stop them rebuilding their enrichment facilities to get that uranium they need to build a nuclear bomb? So I think Israel will be speaking to Russia, which is, of course, a patron or ally of Iran, to get the Russians to understand there's no point in helping Iran rebuild its nuclear program. It's over. Israel, whether alone, whether together with the United States, will make sure that the Iranian regime can never get nuclear weapons, and it would be a very bad idea to support Iran's so-called right to enrich uranium. You know, the most dangerous regime in the world cannot be allowed to get anywhere close to the world's most dangerous weapons.
One last question, and I've asked you this time and time again, but any misconceptions, misunderstandings about the situation going on in the Middle East that you want to make sure to clarify for people who are watching?
Right now, there is a crazy propaganda campaign being waged around the world to convince people that Israel is trying to deliberately starve the people of Gaza. Nothing could be further from the truth. Israel is trying to get food to people in Gaza and make sure the terrorists can't steal it. By the way, it's the biggest operation in military history to get aid into enemy-held territory while the enemy is still in power, still holding hostages, still able to shoot mortars and rockets, and still fighting. No army in the history of the world has delivered so much food. We're talking nearly 2 million tons of food since the war began. It's insane. Just the day before yesterday, I was in the Gaza Strip and saw the mountains and mountains of aid that is rotting in the sun because the UN hasn't come to pick it up, even though Israel is begging the United Nations, please do your job and get the food to the people who need it. So I know everyone here is seeing some very upsetting images, some very manipulative. We're seeing a lot of images of children with cerebral palsy and other serious muscular dystrophy conditions, and they're being passed off as starving children inside Gaza, although it's clear they have pre-existing medical conditions, including one case of a child held up as an example of starvation. And Israel had, in fact, helped him get abroad to Italy for medical treatment. Israel's doing its best right now to try to get food to people who need it, more than any other military, make sure that Hamas can't steal it. And we need pressure on Hamas to stop stealing aid and to surrender and end this war, and to the UN agencies that know that the easiest thing to do to cover up for incompetence, to cover up for negligence, is to blame Israel. But people need to stop buying it.
And one thing that's interesting there that you mentioned, we did see Kogat actually posting out on Twitter an image that's been circulating that they said is a child who actually has a pre-existing condition and is not starving there in Gaza. So kind of leaning to what you were talking about there. Eylon, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. Anything else you want to add about this before I let you go?
Josh, this war has been going on for far too long since the Hamas terror regime dragged the Middle East into war on October 7th, 2023. Everyone here in Israel needs it to end, but it needs to end with all the hostages home and with Hamas out of power, because if this ends with hostages still trapped in Gaza or Hamas still on its feet, the next war will only be a matter of time, and no one wants that.
All right, Eylon, thank you again for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh.
And you are taking a live look here over Khan Yunis at this hour. We will continue to follow all of the latest developments there out of the Middle East, as we always do here